You are resting now, your body heavy and calm, supported by the surface beneath you. The room is quiet, your breathing slow, your thoughts beginning to loosen their grip. Feels as though nothing is moving at all. Yet even as you grow still, the earth beneath you is quietly awake. Far below your feet, beyond floors and foundations, beyond soil and stone, there is motion unfolding at a pace too slow to notice, yet too powerful to ever truly stop. The planet is never frozen in place. It is breathing, stretching, settling into itself with immense patience. This movement does not announce itself. It does not hurry. It simply continues. You can imagine the Earth as a deep, layered body, much like your own. At the surface, there is firmness and shape, a sense of solidity you trust without question. But deeper down, warmth begins to gather. Pressure builds. Materials soften, not into liquid chaos, but into something more thoughtful, more deliberate. Here, rock behaves less like stone and more like memory. The ground beneath you feels stable because its motion is measured in millimeters, sometimes less across entire years. Mountains are born slower than the growth of a single hair. Oceans open and close over spans longer than any story you have ever heard. The earth has learned that speed is not required for transformation. As you lie there, you are sharing this stillness. Your heart beats quietly. Your lungs rise and fall. Inside you, cells divide and repair, chemical signals drift from one place to another, and time moves forward without demanding your attention. The planet moves the same way. It changes without asking to be watched. Beneath the continents, heat flows outward from the Earth's interior. This warmth is ancient, left over from the planet's formation and constantly renewed by the slow decay of radioactive elements. It rises gently, like warmth from a sleeping body under blankets. This heat does not rush upward. It nudges, presses, and encourages motion over unimaginable spans of time. You do not feel this heat directly, but it shapes everything you stand upon. It softens the deep layers of rock, allowing them to move, not freely, not wildly, but with the slow confidence of something that knows it has all the time it needs. This movement is called convection, but you do not need the word. You can simply picture warmth rising and cooler material sinking, a quiet circulation beneath the surface. Above these deep, flowing layers rests the outer shell of the Earth, broken into vast sections. These sections feel permanent to you because your life passes too quickly to notice their drift. But they are not fixed. They slide, press, and pull against one another with steady determination. Their motion is subtle enough to feel like silence. This is the quiet restlessness of the planet. Not chaos, not violence, but an ongoing adjustment. The Earth is always finding its balance, redistributing weight, releasing stress, and storing memory in layers of stone. Every grain of sand, every folded mountain, every deep ocean trench is the result of this endless, gentle negotiation. As you sink deeper into rest, you may notice how comfort comes not from stopping entirely, but from settling into rhythm. The Earth understands this. Its movements follow patterns shaped by physics and time. Nothing happens without cause. Nothing happens without patience. Long before any human lay listening to stories like this, the planet was already practicing its slow dance. Continents that are now distant once touched. Seas that now separate lands were once dry ground. These changes did not happen suddenly. They unfolded like long thoughts, each step depending on the one before it. You can imagine the surface of the Earth as a calm face, while beneath it thoughts drift and shift. Pressure builds quietly, released only when necessary. This pressure does not feel like tension. It feels like intention, like the Earth knowing where it is going, even if it takes millions of years to arrive. Even earthquakes, which seem sudden and dramatic, are part of this slow story. They are moments when long-held stress finally relaxes. They are not acts of anger, but acts of release. The Earth letting go the way your body does when it exhales. Most of the time, though, the planet does not need to announce itself. It simply moves quietly, invisibly, carrying continents as effortlessly as you carry dreams through sleep. The ground beneath you feels solid because its motion is so calm, so steady, that it becomes trustworthy. As your thoughts begin to drift, you may feel a strange comfort in knowing that you are not resting on something static, but on something alive with purpose. The earth supports you not by resisting change, but by embracing it slowly. This quiet restlessness is not something to fear. It is the reason mountains exist at all. It is the reason landscapes change, rivers find new paths, and life adapts. The same slow forces that lift stone also create space for forests, valleys, and homes. You are part of this story, too. Your body is made of materials forged in ancient stars, arranged by processes just as patient as those shaping the planet beneath you. Your rest mirrors the Earth's own rhythm, active without effort, changing without urgency. As sleep approaches, the details soften. You do not need to picture the depths clearly. You only need to sense the steadiness of motion below, the reassurance that nothing is stuck, nothing is rushed. The planet knows how to take its time. And as you drift closer to sleep, you may begin to wonder how this vast, restless Earth is divided into moving pieces, sliding together and apart, carrying the surface of the world along with them. You imagine the Earth not as one solid body, but as many gentle fragments drifting together in the dark. As your breathing slows, the idea settles easily into your mind. The planet beneath you is not a single, unbroken shell. It is a mosaic, vast and patient, moving so slowly that its motion feels like rest itself. These fragments are enormous beyond everyday understanding. Each one carries continents, oceans, cities, forests, and histories upon its broad surface. Yet they float, not on liquid fire, but on rocks softened by immense heat and pressure. This deeper layer yields just enough to allow movement, like thick honey warming in the sun, never hurried, never still. You do not feel this drifting because it is measured in centimeters over years, and years slip by unnoticed in the span of a single life. Still, the motion is real. It is steady. It has direction. The Earth is quietly rearranging itself beneath you, with no need for attention or approval. As you rest, you might picture these plates as slow travelers, gliding across a globe-sized sea of time. They do not steer sharply. They respond gently to forces rising from below, nudged by heat escaping the planet's interior. This warmth rises, spreads, cools, and sinks again, guiding the plates above without ever touching the surface directly. The plates themselves are strong, rigid, and resilient. They do not bend easily. They prefer to move as whole pieces, carrying everything on top of them along for the journey. Mountains, plains, and coastlines are passengers on this deep, invisible drift. You too are being carried even now. Some plates move away from each other, creating space between them. In these quiet separations, the Earth opens slowly, allowing molten rock to rise and cool, forming new surface. This is how oceans are born, not in dramatic moments, but through countless small additions, layer upon layer, over millions of years. Other plates drift toward one another, closing distances that once seemed permanent. Their meetings are unhurried, yet inevitable. When they touch, neither wishes to disappear. Instead, they press, adjust, and respond, storing energy for future chapters of the planet's story. There are also places where plates slide alongside each other, neither colliding nor separating, but moving laterally, like strangers passing in the night. Even here, friction gathers quietly. Nothing is wasted. Every movement leaves a trace. As you listen, the idea of drifting begins to feel familiar. Your own thoughts move this way as you fall asleep, gliding from one image to another without urgency. The Earth thinks like this too. It does not leap. It drifts. These plates have names and boundaries traced by scientists, but you do not need to remember them. What matters is the feeling. A planet made of parts that cooperate without awareness, guided by simple physical rules and immense patience. Complexity emerges not from intention, but from time. The surface of the Earth feels solid because the plates are thick and strong. Yet their strength does not make them immobile. It allows them to travel whole, preserving landscapes as they move. Deserts wander. Forests migrate. Fossils find themselves far from where they began. Long ago, all these fragments were joined together. Over time, warmth and motion persuaded them to separate, creating the familiar shapes of continents you know today. This separation was not loss. It was expansion, an unfolding that allowed oceans to breathe and climates to diversify. As sleep draws nearer, you may sense how comforting it is that nothing here is rushed. The plates do not collide suddenly. They do not tear apart without warning. Every movement is prepared by ages of quiet adjustment beneath the surface. Even when change becomes noticeable, it is the result of motion that began long before. The Earth never surprises itself. It always knows what is coming, even if you do not. You rest on one of these drifting pieces now, supported by kilometers of stone, floating atop softened depths. It carries you gently through space and time, asking nothing in return. You do not need to hold on. The plate beneath you has been moving like this for hundreds of millions of years. As your awareness fades, you may wonder what drives this endless drifting, what invisible forces warm the deep earth enough to keep stone in motion. And beneath these plates, beneath their slow journeys, something hotter and older is always quietly at work. The drifting plates do not choose their paths. They respond to pressure, to heat, to the gentle push and pull of gravity acting over vast scales. This obedience to simple laws gives rise to extraordinary patterns. From this slow compliance come mountain chains, deep trenches, and the long arcs of island chains scattered across oceans. You can imagine the plates listening, not with ears, but with weight. They feel where the earth is warmer, where it is cooler, where material below them rises or sinks. In response, they glide almost imperceptibly, like leaves carried by a current too deep to see. This movement is balanced. As some regions gain surface, others lose it. The earth does not grow larger or smaller. It reshapes itself, redistributing what already exists. Creation and destruction are simply different moments in the same motion. As your body relaxes further, the thought of drifting becomes soothing rather than strange. You are accustomed to thinking of stability as stillness. The earth offers a different lesson. Stability can come from constant, gentle movement. Nothing here is wasted. Old surface sinks back into the depths, carrying memories of oceans and skies with it. New surface rises, fresh and warm, ready to cool beneath rain and wind. The cycle is unbroken, slow enough to feel eternal. You do not need to stay awake to follow these movements. They continue whether noticed or not. They are patient beyond comprehension. And beneath them, deeper still, heat gathers, pressure builds, and stone remembers every moment it has endured. This is the world beneath your dreams, always shifting, always supporting. As you drift closer to sleep, the idea settles gently. The earth is not one thing, but many, moving together in quiet agreement, preparing you to understand what happens when these drifting pieces finally meet. Their meetings are not accidents. They are conversations written in pressure and time, waiting patiently to be heard. Soon, you will feel how closeness changes everything. Slow pressure turns drifting into contact. The calm motion prepares for resistance and rise. Stone learns what happens next. The story waits just ahead. You remain gently carried forward, into the meeting places. As you rest more deeply now, your awareness drifts downward, past the surface of the earth and into its warmer interior. You do not fall quickly. You sink, slowly and gently, as though moving through layers of quiet thought. Here time stretches. Here heat waits. At the center of the planet, warmth has never truly faded. It is a lingering echo of formation, a memory of collisions and compression from the earliest days of the solar system. This heat does not blaze or roar. It remains steady, persistent, like embers glowing beneath layers of ash. You can imagine this warmth rising, not in flames, but in slow motion. It travels through solid rock that behaves, over long spans, like something almost fluid. Under enough heat and pressure, stone does not shatter or flow freely. It yields just enough to move, just enough to remember. Pressure lives here as quietly as heat. Layer upon layer presses downward, not aggressively, but continuously. Each layer carries weight, and together they shape what lies below. Rock responds by adjusting its structure, rearranging minerals, becoming something new without ever fully losing what it once was. This is how stone learns. It does not forget its past. It records every change in its internal patterns, every moment of stress and release. Even when transformed, it carries traces of earlier forms, like a story written over many times but never erased. You are familiar with this kind of memory. Your own body carries it. Muscles remember effort. Bones remember pressure. Your thoughts, too, are shaped by experiences that no longer feel present, yet still influence how you respond. The Earth works the same way, only slower, deeper, and with far more patience. Heat and pressure together create motion. Not fast motion, not dramatic motion, but a steady circulation. Warmer material becomes slightly less dense and rises. Cooler material sinks to take its place. This exchange is gentle, but it never stops. It is the quiet engine beneath the drifting plates above. You do not need equations or diagrams to feel this process. You can sense it the way you sense warmth spreading under a blanket. There is no urgency, only inevitability. Given enough time, warmth always moves outward. Given enough pressure, stone always responds. As this deep circulation continues, it transfers energy upward. The plates above do not move on their own. They are guided by this slow push from below, nudged by rising warmth and settling coolness. The motion feels calm because it is balanced. Nothing surges without return. Rocks formed deep within the earth carry this history with them. When they eventually rise closer to the surface, they bring evidence of where they have been. Their minerals align in ways that reveal pressure. Their textures reveal heat. Scientists read these signs, but you can simply imagine stone as a traveler that remembers every place it has passed through. Some rocks spend hundreds of millions of years buried, compressed, and warmed, only to be lifted again later. They emerge changed, denser, more ordered, shaped by conditions far removed from air and light. Their memory is internal, silent, and complete. As you continue to relax, this idea of memory becomes soothing rather than heavy. Nothing is lost in the earth. Change does not erase what came before. It transforms it, folds it inward, and carries it forward. Pressure builds slowly, but it also releases slowly. There are no sudden decisions here. Stress accumulates until stone adjusts, bending instead of breaking whenever possible. When it cannot bend anymore, it stores the strain, waiting for the right moment to let go. This patient accumulation is not tension in the human sense. It is simply balance being negotiated over time. The earth is not strained. It is deliberate. Heat continues its gentle work, softening boundaries, encouraging movement, enabling transformation. Without this warmth, the planet would be locked in place, unmoving and silent. With it, the earth remains alive with possibility. As your breathing grows slower, you may notice how similar this feels to drifting toward sleep. Thoughts warm, loosen, and rearrange. Pressure from the day fades. Memories remain, but they no longer demand attention. They settle into deeper layers, shaping you quietly. The earth never rushes its processes. Mountains rise because heat and pressure persist, not because they force themselves upward. Change happens because conditions allow it, not because anything insists. Deep within the planet, materials flow in vast, looping paths that take tens of millions of years to complete. A single cycle of rising and sinking might last longer than entire species exist. Yet from these slow loops come the movements that shape continents. The stone beneath you has been warmed, pressed, and shaped more times than can be counted. Even the most stable ground carries a history of transformation. Stability here does not mean permanence. It means balance. As sleep approaches, the details soften again. You do not need to picture minerals or layers clearly. You only need to feel the patience of the system. Heat rises. Pressure responds. Stone remembers. And as these forces continue their endless conversation below, the drifting plates above are guided toward each other or drawn apart. The warmth prepares the way. The pressure decides the pace. Soon, those drifting pieces will meet. And when they do, all the stored heat and memory will shape what happens next. turning quiet motion into resistance, folding and rise, where patience begins to build mountains. You remain carried by slow motion as the drifting pieces of the earth draw nearer to one another. There is no sudden impact, no sharp moment of collision. Instead, there is approach, patient, steady, and unavoidable. Distance closes so gradually that even the planet itself seems unbothered by what is coming. These plates have been traveling for millions of years, guided by warmth from below and pressure from all sides. Now, their paths bring them together. Neither plate intends to vanish. Each is thick, strong, and unwilling to sink easily. And so, when they meet, the earth does not shatter. It responds. You can imagine the meeting like two slow-moving currents pressing together in a deep ocean. First, nothing seems to happen. The surface remains calm, but below, pressure begins to build. Motion does not stop. It transforms. Stone, under these conditions, does something unexpected. It bends. Given enough time and heat, rock behaves less like something brittle and more like something patient. It folds the way thick fabric folds under careful hands. It crumples slowly, layer upon layer, never tearing, only rearranging. This bending is not weakness. It is strength expressed differently. The plates resist one another, and in that resistance, the earth finds a new shape. Thickness increases. Layers stack. Material that once lay flat begins to tilt, curve, and rise. You may feel something familiar here. In your own life, resistance often feels uncomfortable. Yet resistance is also where structure forms. Without it, nothing holds shape. The earth understands this deeply. As the plates continue to press together, the crust between them shortens horizontally and grows vertically. What cannot move forward must move upward. This is not a decision, but a response to simple physical rules. Pressure seeks release. Space must be made. Over immense spans of time, this slow compression builds elevation. What begins deep below gradually reaches toward the surface. Folded rock layers stack higher and higher, forming the foundations of future mountains. At no point does the earth rush. It lifts stone the way breath lifts a sleeping chest. The meeting zones are wide, stretching hundreds of kilometers across. Change is spread out, diffused, and gentle. There is no single line where one plate ends and the other begins. Instead, there is a broad region of shared strain where the planet quietly negotiates. Heat from below softens the process. Warmth allows stone to bend rather than break. Minerals realign. Crystals grow in new directions. The rock becomes denser, stronger, and more complex. Every layer tells part of the story of pressure endured and adjusted to. Some rocks are pushed deep and warmed further, transforming into new forms before rising again. Others remain closer to the surface, folded and lifted without ever fully leaving the crust. Together, they form intricate patterns that will one day be visible in exposed cliffs and mountain faces. As you sink deeper into rest, you may picture this slow folding as a calming rhythm. Press, hold, adjust, press again. The earth is not fighting itself. It is cooperating with its own forces. In some places, one plate eventually yields slightly more than the other. It may sink downward, sliding beneath its neighbor, carrying surface material back into the depths. Even here, the process is gradual. Nothing disappears suddenly. Everything transitions. Where neither plate easily gives way, the thickened crust continues to rise. The surface responds by lifting, grain by grain, kilometer by kilometer, over millions of years. What will one day be called a mountain range begins as a subtle swell in the land. At the surface, life continues unaware. Rivers flow, forests grow, climates shift gently. The uplift is too slow to disrupt daily rhythms. Yet over generations beyond counting, the land grows higher, cooler, and more rugged. You may notice how comforting it feels that such immense change can occur without drama. The earth does not need explosions to build its tallest features. It needs only time, pressure, and persistence. This process explains why mountain ranges often contain folded layers of rock that were once horizontal. Even marine sediments formed beneath ancient seas. These layers were not carried upward violently. They were escorted patiently as pressure guided them skyward. The meeting of plates is a long conversation, spoken in compression and heat. Each plate listens through contact, responding minute by minute, year by year, age by age. There is no winner. There is only outcome. As you rest, your body mirrors this negotiation. Muscles release tension slowly. Thoughts fold inward. Resistance softens into rest. Nothing is forced. Everything finds its place. Even earthquakes, when they occur in these regions, are not signs of failure. They are moments when accumulated stress finds release, small adjustments in a process that is otherwise smooth and continuous. Most of the work happens silently. Mountains born this way carry complexity within them. Their rocks are twisted, layered, transformed. They are not simple piles of stone, but records of endurance. Every ridge and valley reflects the balance between resistance and yielding. As the crust thickens, it becomes buoyant, floating higher atop the softer layers below. The deeper roots of mountains sink downward as their peaks rise upward, maintaining balance. Height is always paired with depth. This balance is soothing to consider. Nothing stands alone. Every rise has an anchor. Every elevation is supported by something unseen. As your breathing grows slower, the image of folded stone may blur into feeling. Pressure becomes weight. Weight becomes support. Resistance becomes structure. The plates continue their slow approach long after the first uplift begins. Mountains do not finish forming quickly. They grow while erosion begins to work at their surface, wearing them down even as they rise. Creation and removal happen together. You do not need to follow every detail. You only need to sense the patience of the process. The earth builds by refusing to rush, by allowing resistance to guide form rather than break it. Soon, these rising lands will face new forces from above. Wind, water, and ice will arrive, shaping what pressure has lifted. The meeting of plates sets the stage, but the story does not end here. As you drift closer to sleep, you rest with the knowledge that beauty can come from slow resistance, that pressure handled gently can create height instead of harm. And as the newly formed mountains begin their quiet existence, standing taller with every passing age, you may begin to wonder how something so slowly lifted can continue to change, breath by breath, grain by grain, under the touch of time and the soft persistence of the surface world. As you drift deeper into rest, your attention lingers on the surfaces where the plates have met. You sense the gentle pressure still holding, the stone folding and thickening, the earth breathing slowly beneath your feet. From this silent negotiation, mountains begin their patient ascent. They do not leap skyward. They rise in millimeters, sometimes less, over timescales far longer than a single human lifetime. Their growth is imperceptible to your senses, yet unwavering in purpose. Imagine the crust as a pliant but resilient sheet, stretched and compressed over time. Each layer of rock adds subtle weight, pressing down on what lies beneath. And the underlying layers respond by moving slowly, gradually pushing upward the newly folded masses. It is as if the planet exhales, lifting its surface in measured, deliberate motions, while deep currents below readjust to support what has been gained above. This uplift is not sudden or violent. It carries no tremor, no clamor. Mountains rise quietly because the earth has learned patience. Time is the medium of transformation here, measured not in minutes or years, but in millions of years. The mountains you see or imagine today have histories stretching back to ages when oceans and continents looked very different. And still, they are not finished. You lie on your plate, feeling the calm persistence beneath you. Your own body mirrors this rhythm. The subtle rising and falling of breath, the slow circulation of blood, the quiet rebuilding of cells. Growth can happen without hurry, without spectacle. The earth demonstrates this principle in stone and soil. Each fold, each bend, contributes to a higher, more complex landscape. Layers of sediment, previously horizontal on ancient seabeds, have been pushed upward. Old volcanic deposits, hardened and transformed, are lifted skyward. Metamorphic rocks, dense and resistant, emerge from depths where heat and pressure have remade them. Each layer tells its own story, but together they form a mountain. a record of both persistence and patience. Even the smallest change matters. A single millimeter of uplift may seem inconsequential, but across thousands of years, these tiny adjustments accumulate into ridges, peaks, and valleys. You can imagine the mountain as breathing slowly, rising imperceptibly, expanding toward the sky, while the earth beneath reshapes itself to accommodate the ascent. You begin to sense the paradox of permanence. Mountains appear eternal, immovable, and timeless. Yet they are in constant motion, their very form a product of the interplay of forces deep within the planet. Each peak and ridge is a snapshot of an ongoing process. Nothing stands still forever, even stone. And yet, in this ceaseless movement, the mountains achieve stability. Consider the valleys between these rising peaks. They, too, are shaped by uplift. As surrounding rock is elevated, the spaces between may sink slightly or fill with sediment, creating gentle slopes and lowlands. Rivers will eventually carve channels, and glaciers may sculpt their own quiet paths. The interplay of forces above and below creates a landscape that is alive, continuously adjusting to maintain balance. The slow uplift teaches something about resilience. Stone bends rather than breaks when given time. Pressure distributes itself evenly over great expanses. Heat from below softens the rigid edges, allowing change without catastrophe. Mountains are resilient because they grow within the conditions that shape them, not against them. You may picture standing at the base of one of these mountains, imagining its rise as an almost imperceptible whisper of motion. The peaks are not thrust upward by sudden events. They do not erupt in instant grandeur. Their ascent is a meditation on time itself, each layer of rock a word in a story written over epochs. Your body, lying still, shares this rhythm. Minute by minute, cell by cell, life continues quietly, unnoticed but persistent. The mountain and your breathing are aligned in their slow insistence, their gentle defiance of stillness. Both demonstrate that growth does not require haste, only steadiness. Deep within the crust, forces continue to operate. Rocks are compressed, stretched, folded, and realigned. Heat circulates in silent currents, softening stone enough to allow it to rise. The crust thickens as the upper layers lift, while deeper layers sink slightly to maintain balance. Buoyancy, that gentle force pushing upward, accompanies pressure from below to guide the ascent. As time stretches across millennia, the mountain takes shape. Its flanks steepen, ridges develop, and peaks begin to punctuate the horizon. Layers of stone that were once ocean floor now tower above clouds. Fossils that recorded ancient life are elevated, preserved within the new heights. And yet, despite the grandeur, the process remains quiet, invisible in the span of a human lifetime. You might feel a sense of comfort in this. Mountains, though enormous and powerful, do not need urgency. Their form is the product of slow negotiation. The Earth models patience perfectly, showing that lasting change comes from consistent, gentle movement rather than sudden force. Wind, rain, and ice will eventually sculpt what the uplift has created, but they are part of a later chapter. For now, the focus is on persistence from within. The internal pressures, the rising warmth, the folds of rock forming beneath the surface, these are the architects. Surface processes will refine, polish, and reshape, but the mountain's essence comes from patient uplift. Every peak has a counterpart deep below. Roots extend into the mantle, dense and heavy, balancing the weight above. What rises is matched by what sinks, creating harmony between the visible and invisible. The earth demonstrates equilibrium in a way you can almost feel, a reminder that every action has a counterbalance, even in stone. As you sink further into relaxation, you can imagine the mountain growing beneath your imagination. Millimeter by millimeter, layer by layer, it climbs, lifting the horizon without haste. Your thoughts slow to match its tempo. You do not need to hurry. The mountain's movement teaches stillness. Even the idea of permanence shifts in this understanding. What seems stable, a ridge, a peak, a slope, is a snapshot in an ongoing process. Each mountain is temporary in form, but enduring in essence. The Earth carries the memory of its past movements while allowing the present to shape its future. And as the mountain rises in your mind's eye, you may begin to feel the weight of future forces that will meet it. Plates will continue to press, pushing the land higher. Streams and rivers will carve valleys. Wind and ice will trace gentle patterns on slopes. The work of the Earth is never finished, even as one stage of uplift completes itself. You rest in the knowledge that this immense growth, so slow and deliberate, is a model of patient creation. Even what seems permanent is still becoming. Mountains teach the rhythm of millimeters, the wisdom of quiet resistance, and the beauty of ongoing transformation. And as your body drifts further towards sleep, you may sense that this patient ascent is only the beginning. Soon, movement will meet release, tension will find expression, and the world above the rising stone will begin to change in ways that echo the deep persistence below. As you rest on the slowly rising land, you feel the immense weight of stone and time beneath you. Mountains grow in patient ascent, yet even in their slow persistence, not every movement is continuous. Sometimes, the Earth hesitates, holding tension in silent restraint, until the pressure must find release. These pauses create something we call faults, fractures in the planet's skin that carry stories of stress, patience, and eventual letting go. You can imagine the crust as a soft but resilient fabric stretched over deeper layers. Occasionally, the tension becomes too much for the material to bend quietly. Small cracks form first, almost invisible, like whispered lines in a quiet notebook. They are not violent marks, but gentle acknowledgments that movement cannot always be smooth. Every crack holds memory, and every memory carries energy. Energy gathers along these lines over time. Rock presses and pushes, layer on layer, until the stress accumulates enough to demand a shift. This does not happen all at once. The release is measured. The fault may creep along millimeters per year, barely noticeable, yet always moving. In other places, the shift may be more sudden, a reminder that even patient systems sometimes reach thresholds that cannot be delayed. You may notice a similarity to your own body and mind. Tension builds slowly, a thought held, a posture maintained, a worry carried quietly. Eventually, you release not in explosion but in gentle adjustment. The Earth's faults act in the same way. They let go, restoring balance, allowing the larger system to continue its calm operation. Some faults are near mountain ranges, where plates meet and push against one another. Here, the rocks are under constant pressure, folding, bending, and resisting. The surface holds energy accumulated over millions of years. When the pressure is too great, the fault slips slightly, releasing only part of the stored energy. Then the slow building begins again. It is an ongoing rhythm, quiet and persistent. Other faults occur in more subtle regions, far from the grandeur of mountain peaks. They are hidden, gently shifting beneath plains or deserts. You do not see them, but they shape the landscape nonetheless. Small movements along these faults can tilt rock layers, change drainage patterns, and create gentle undulations in the land. The Earth is always adjusting, even where the surface appears still. You can picture the fault as a seam in a fabric that stretches and relaxes over time. It holds together the material on either side, allowing movement without total separation. Sometimes one side moves slowly past the other, a silent gesture of release. Sometimes the motion is almost imperceptible, almost intimate, yet it maintains the balance of the entire system. Even earthquakes, when they occur, are only moments in a much longer story. They are spikes of energy, brief yet inevitable, marking the culmination of slow strain. The plates themselves are not aggressive. They simply respond to the forces acting upon them. The quake is not a shout, but a sigh, a natural expression of accumulated tension. Faults teach you something about resilience. They show that rigidity can be harmful and flexibility is necessary. The Earth maintains its shape not by resisting change entirely, but by releasing it carefully. Stone, though seemingly solid, is alive to pressure and responds with subtle shifts that preserve stability. You might reflect on how this applies to your own life. Tension need not break you. Measured release can create balance and continuity. At depth, Faults can extend for hundreds of kilometers, stretching through rock layers too deep to see. They are invisible anchors, storing energy that slowly influences surface movement. Their paths are curved, braided, and intricate, following the internal patterns of stress. Rocks along these faults often show evidence of past slips, polished surfaces where stone has moved against stone, microscopic scratches that record countless small adjustments over millions of years. You can imagine yourself sliding along one of these faults, not in danger, but in slow awareness of motion. The ground shifts beneath you at a rate so gentle that only your imagination can trace it. Every millimeter of movement represents balance being restored, pressure being eased, energy being transferred. The fault is not a fracture in the Earth's health, but a mechanism of continuity, a way for the planet to remain whole. Some faults intersect with others, creating networks of seams across the crust. Where they cross, motion becomes more complex. Energy must find multiple paths to release, sometimes creating zones of gentle tremor, sometimes areas that remain locked for centuries. These interactions remind you that balance is not always simple. It is dynamic, layered, and interconnected. The rocks themselves carry memory. Minerals may bend, fold, or realign in response to repeated stress along a fault. Tiny cracks propagate slowly, filling with new material, strengthening the overall structure. Faults are living records of tension and relief, an ongoing diary written in stone. Even the surface expresses these movements subtly. A small ridge, a tilted layer, a slight change in slope, all are traces of the deep adjustments happening below. Wind and water will eventually reshape these features, softening what is visible, but the energy beneath continues unabated. You do not see the full story, but you can feel it in the quiet persistence of the Earth. As you relax further, consider the gentle duality of pressure and release. Movement and rest are not opposites. They are complementary. The Earth demonstrates this balance beautifully. Every fault line, every fracture, every millimeter of slippage is a step in maintaining equilibrium. Without these shifts, the crust would become rigid and unyielding, vulnerable to larger failures. Your body, too, finds comfort in release. A deep exhale, a subtle adjustment in posture, a loosening of tension, all echo the mechanisms of the planet. You are connected, in principle, to these slow, patient processes. Your breath is as rhythmic as the creeping fault. Your relaxation mirrors the Earth's balance. Even when a fault slips more dramatically, resulting in a noticeable quake, the event is a moment in the continuum. Energy stored for centuries finally moves, and then the cycle begins anew. Mountains continue to rise, rivers continue to flow, plates continue to drift. Nothing stops completely, nothing hurries. The Earth simply adjusts. This chapter of movement teaches patience. It shows that even breaks, even apparent disruptions, are part of a larger pattern. They are necessary pauses, gentle resets that allow the slow rhythm of uplift, drift, and shaping to continue unhindered. Resistance and release coexist, creating a harmony that spans millions of years. As you lie in your stillness, you might imagine watching a tiny fault creep millimeter by millimeter. It is silent, invisible, yet profoundly active. Each subtle shift preserves the larger system. Each release maintains the balance needed for mountains to rise, for landscapes to evolve, for life to find its way along rivers and plains. And as sleep draws closer, you may begin to sense the next stage of the Earth's quiet work. The surfaces lifted by uplift, stabilized by faults, will meet new sculptors. Wind will whisper across slopes. Water will carve its own gentle paths. Ice may etch and polish. The patient story of the planet continues, shaping form from pressure and preparing the surface for its delicate reshaping. As you continue to rest, the mountains you imagined rising slowly from the Earth's patient folds now meet the quiet work of sculptors above the surface. These sculptors do not rush. They arrive with subtle hands, wind brushing gently across slopes, rivers meandering through valleys, ice creeping along rock in slow, persistent advance. Their task is not destruction but refinement, a gentle shaping of what uplift has created. You can imagine a river, its flow constant but never hurried, tracing paths through the newly elevated land. Each drop of water carries tiny particles of rock, loosened from the mountain face by rain, frost, or gravity. These particles travel downstream, shifting shape slowly, wearing edges, polishing surfaces, and depositing material in new locations. Change comes softly, but inevitably, like sand slipping through fingers over centuries. Wind is equally patient. It bends and carries dust, abrades rock surfaces, and smooths sharp edges over time. In some places, it hollows stone in quiet hollows, forming gentle arches or rounded ridges. You might picture standing in the calm of an empty desert, feeling how invisible hands have moved the landscape for millennia, creating a subtle beauty in every grain shifted. Glaciers, though seemingly solid and static, are even slower but just as purposeful. Ice under its own immense weight flows. Mountains are polished beneath its path, valleys deepened and widened, stones carried along or ground down. Glaciers are patient travelers, erasing some lines of the past while leaving new patterns behind, always reshaping without haste. As you breathe, you may notice a rhythm similar to these processes in your own body. Every breath, every subtle circulation of blood, every minor adjustment in posture is a small, continual reshaping that maintains balance and comfort. Just like the earth, change in you is constant, gentle, and necessary. Nothing is destroyed in this work. A river may cut a canyon, but the stone becomes sediment, forming new ground elsewhere. Wind may hollow a rock, but the material is simply moved, not vanished. Ice may grind and polish, but it only reshapes the landscape over long spans. Loss here is not annihilation. It is transformation. Erosion softens what uplift has made firm. Peaks become less sharp, ridges less abrupt, slopes more flowing. The mountains that once seemed immovable are gently tamed by the forces above. Yet in this taming, there is a beauty of subtlety. The earth shows that permanence is not about resisting change, but embracing it, allowing form to emerge through patience. Water, especially, teaches a slow kind of creativity. Streams follow paths of least resistance, but they do not follow them blindly. They adapt to every obstacle, curve around boulders, carve channels through soft sediments, and adjust as the land beneath them shifts. In this continuous adjustment, they sculpt valleys, form deltas, and create fertile plains. Each river is a moving artist, writing its mark over eons, and yet every mark is quiet, almost invisible to daily observation. Rain participates in this artistry as well. Droplets fall, striking rock and soil, dislodging grains with each tiny impact. Over time, these small motions add up to significant change. You can imagine hundreds of thousands of raindrops touching a cliff face, each one nudging the stone, shifting a particle here, a particle there, until the face itself is transformed. Even ice in the form of frost can sculpt subtly. When water seeps into cracks and freezes, it expands, gently prying apart rock over countless cycles. The stone yields, one tiny movement at a time, creating fractures that wind and water will later exploit. This is patient persistence at its most delicate, a quiet force operating without spectacle. Erosion is a reminder that change can be both gentle and inevitable. Mountains rise from heat and pressure below, then yield to the forces above. It is a cycle of uplift and wearing down, a rhythm repeated endlessly across landscapes. The process balances creation with refinement, force with patience, persistence with letting go. You may notice how this mirrors your own experiences. Events in your life, memories, and challenges shape you slowly. Some changes are dramatic, but most are imperceptible, grain by grain, shaping who you are without urgency. The quiet work of erosion is a lesson in letting time be your ally, not your enemy. Wind, water, and ice act in harmony with gravity, which gently encourages everything to seek equilibrium. Material that is lifted eventually descends, transported to lower elevations, forming valleys, plains, and riverbeds. The energy of the earth is never wasted. It is transformed from one form to another. Nothing disappears completely. Over millions of years, Erosion reveals layers of rock that once lay buried deep within the earth. Sediments deposited at the bottom of ancient seas may now form cliffs, terraces, or plateaus. The earth, in its slow artistry, uncovers the stories of its past while continuing to shape its present. It is both historian and sculptor, recording and refining simultaneously. Even the smallest grains matter. Sand carried by a gentle stream today will shape the beach tomorrow. Dust lifted by wind today will settle as new soil elsewhere. Ice scraping a boulder leaves microscopic traces that alter the surface for millennia. In every detail, erosion is meticulous, patient, and continuous. As you rest deeper, you can imagine the mountain's rising form softening under these forces. Peaks once jagged now slope gently. Sharp cliffs now wear rounded contours. Valleys deepen, rivers meander with purpose, and plains form where highlands once pressed together. Every feature is the product of persistence, of gentle work sustained across unimaginable spans. Erosion does not compete with uplift. It complements it. While the earth pushes mountains skyward from below, wind, water, and ice refine them above. The two processes are inseparable partners, crafting landscapes that are simultaneously dramatic and tender. One builds, the other smooths, and together they create harmony. Your body mirrors this subtle artistry. Bones, muscles, and tissues adjust gradually to maintain balance. Thoughts, too, can soften and reshape with gentle reflection. Just as the earth yields to quiet forces, you, too, can find ease in small, steady adjustments. Even loss is transformed. Rock that falls from a cliff becomes sediment. Soil that washes into a river nourishes distant valleys. Water that flows over stone polishes it, carrying the fragments onward. There is no disappearance without purpose, no erosion without eventual creation. Everything moves in a rhythm of transformation. As sleep deepens, the mountain no longer feels like a static mass. It is alive with quiet work. The wind whispers along its ridges. Rivers trace hidden paths. Ice molds its contours. Every process adds to the unfolding story. You sense that the mountain you imagined rising in Chapter 5 is now a dynamic being, shaped both from within and without, patient and persistent, resilient yet adaptable. And as your mind drifts gently toward dreams, you may begin to sense the deeper memory these layers carry. Every fold, every ridge, every worn valley holds the story of uplift and erosion, heat and pressure, resistance and release. Soon, you will sense how these mountains themselves become archives, recording the long history of the planet in every layer of stone, each telling a story of forces that shaped them, patiently holding memory for you to discove. As you settle into rest, the mountains shaped by uplift and refined by erosion begin to reveal another story, one written in the language of stone itself. Each peak, ridge, and valley carries memory, holding records of the Earth's patient work over millions of years. Mountains are not just landforms. They are living archives, silent keepers of the planet's history. You may imagine a single cliff face. Its layers, visible in bands of color and texture, are like pages in a book. Each stratum tells a story. Sediments deposited in an ancient sea, minerals altered under deep pressure, volcanic ash settled from a sky long vanished. These pages are not written in letters, but in patterns of stone, subtle markers that speak to those who pause and observe. The folding of rocks, the alignment of crystals, the cracks and seams left by faults. All of these are annotations in the mountain's journal. They record moments of stress and release, uplift and erosion. Each layer is a reminder that change is cumulative, slow, and persistent. No moment is lost. Everything leaves a trace. You can imagine the earth as an author, writing continuously for eons. The pen is pressure, the ink is heat, and the paper is stone. Some chapters are exposed on the surface, readable to your eyes. Others remain buried, deep beneath the peaks, waiting for erosion or uplift to bring them into view. Mountains are patient, recording without rush, storing stories that may only be uncovered far in the future. Even the smallest grain of sediment contributes to this archive. It may have been carried by a river from a distant land, ground down by glaciers, or blown by wind across deserts. Embedded within layers of rock, it becomes part of the narrative, preserving a fragment of a distant environment, a memory of forces that once shaped it. These archives are not static. They change as new layers are added, as faults shift, as erosion shapes the surface. Yet even as they evolve, the memory of what came before is retained. The past is never lost. It is merely built upon. Mountains are, in a sense, storytellers who speak slowly, their words spread across millions of years. You may feel a quiet awe in this. To touch a stone, to imagine its journey from molten depths or ancient seabeds to the peak beneath your feet, is to connect with time on a scale beyond daily life. Mountains remind you that patience and persistence create depth, that history is embedded not only in memory or writing but in the very substance of the world. The fossils you may find within these layers are another kind of memory. They are snapshots of life that existed when the rocks were formed, preserved by sediment and pressure, sometimes hidden for tens of millions of years before exposure. Each fossil is a story waiting to be read, a reminder that life has adapted, changed, and moved along with the shifting land. Even the chemical composition of rocks tells a story. Minerals crystallize under specific conditions of heat and pressure, recording the environment in which they formed. Isotopes within the stone can indicate ancient temperatures, ocean chemistry, or the presence of particular elements long gone. Mountains are archives not only of space but of condition, capturing the physical circumstances of ancient Earth. You may notice how calming this idea can be. Mountains do not demand attention, yet they hold knowledge for those who listen patiently. You do not need to understand every layer, every mineral, or every fossil to sense the depth of time they represent. Simply resting here, you are part of the narrative, carried along with the slow unfolding of the Earth's story. The silence of mountains is also a teacher. Unlike rivers or wind, they do not move dramatically. Their message is subtle, persistent, and enduring. The stories they hold are cumulative, each generation of rock preserving what came before while forming the basis for what comes next. You begin to sense that endurance itself is a form of wisdom. Mountains show that time is layered. Past and present coexist in every fold and fracture. Deeply buried rocks may only become visible after erosion has removed hundreds of meters of overlying stone. Yet even then, the memory of prior conditions remains intact. Each layer is a link in a chain that stretches back into prehistory. As you relax further, you might imagine tracing your fingers along a rocky outcrop. Every ridge, every band, every seam is a whisper from the past. The mountains are patient teachers, showing that change does not erase. It accumulates. The story is embedded in form, waiting to be noticed and appreciated. Even when the landscape appears smooth and uniform, the archive continues. Valleys, slopes, and plains are as much a part of the record as peaks and cliffs. Rivers carve into layers of rock, revealing glimpses of what was hidden. Glaciers polish surfaces, exposing patterns created long ago. Nature acts as both archivist and editor, revealing, preserving, and refining the narrative of the mountains. You can think of these mountains as living libraries. Each chapter is formed of rock, each page of sediment, each line of a fault, fold, or fracture. The stories contained within are countless, overlapping, and interconnected. They speak of oceans and deserts, collisions and separations, warmth and pressure. They are slow to reveal themselves, yet patient observation uncovers their wisdom. Your body resonates with this rhythm. Memory is layered within you as well. Muscles hold experience, bones carry past strain, and the mind retains knowledge beyond conscious thought. Rest allows your own layers to settle, rearranging subtly, echoing the slow organization of the stone beneath the mountains. The mountains also record change, not only of the planet but of life itself. Layers may preserve evidence of climate shifts, volcanic eruptions, or mass extinctions. They are silent witnesses to both survival and loss, holding the memory of events that no human could see, yet shaping the earth in ways that influence every organism that walks its surface. You begin to understand that permanence is an illusion. Mountains feel eternal, yet they continue to change. Erosion wears their peaks, faults rearrange their layers, and new uplift adds to their height. Even in this apparent stillness, movement continues. The archive is active, living, and receptive. And as your mind drifts closer to sleep, you may sense that the story held within these mountains is far from finished. The layers you have imagined are ready to teach about the connections between heat, pressure, uplift, erosion, and life itself. Every feature holds a lesson. That time is patient, that memory persists, and that beauty arises through both creation and change. Soon, you will begin to notice how these mountains, patient archivists of deep time, influence the world around them. They guide rivers, redirect wind, and shape ecosystems. Their history is not only beneath the surface but all around, subtly directing life in quiet, enduring ways. As you settle deeper into stillness, you sense the immense quiet of the mountains around you. Their peaks rise toward the sky, their valleys stretch wide, and yet beneath the calm surface, the earth continues its work. Uplift persists, faults shift, rivers carve, and erosion sculpts, all in a slow rhythm, almost imperceptible to the passing moment. The mountains may appear eternal, solid, and unchanging, but they are alive with movement, continuing their story without haste, without spectacle. You may imagine standing on a ridge and feeling the ground beneath you. First, it seems still. Yet if you could perceive the movements too slow for human senses, you would notice stone pressing upward, plates shifting, heat flowing from deep within the planet. This is the Earth's patience made visible in imperceptible gestures. This motion is subtle, but persistent, a heartbeat that spans millions of years. The forces that raised these mountains continue beneath your feet. Magma circulates in the mantle, softening rock, allowing uplift to persist. Crustal plates glide, sometimes in barely detectable increments, carrying mountains along their paths. Even as erosion smooths peaks and fills valleys, uplift counters the wear, maintaining balance over vast spans of time. Nothing halts completely, nothing rushes. The Earth's rhythm is measured and eternal in its patience. You may notice how comforting this is. The world beneath you is never stagnant. Movement is constant, but gentle. Mountains do not appear because of force alone. They persist because slow, steady processes continue day after day, century after century. The planet itself demonstrates that lasting change is built on consistency rather than intensity, that permanence emerges through quiet perseverance. Rivers still trace paths set by the slow rise of peaks. Water flows over sediments carried from ancient times, nourishing valleys, deltas, and plains. Ice continues to creep in cold regions, polishing rock and depositing material. Wind brushes across ridges, shaping cliffs and smoothing exposed layers. Even the smallest forces participate in the ongoing transformation of the land, each contribution adding to a cumulative, patient evolution. Life, too, adapts to this ongoing work. Forests shift their ranges, animals follow water and vegetation, and ecosystems respond to subtle changes in soil, slope, and climate. You may sense that you, too, are connected to this process. Just as the mountains move imperceptibly, so do your own systems adjust minute by minute. Blood flows, cells divide, thoughts fold and settle. Life and Earth share the rhythm of persistent, invisible motion. Even at the peaks, change continues. Frost creeps into cracks, loosening stone. Sediments settle in crevices. Snow compacts and melts, influencing rivers far below. The mountains are never truly finished, because motion, patience, and energy persist beneath the surface. They are works in progress, eternal in their unfolding, teaching you that completion is not a fixed state but a continuous process. You may notice the contrast between the scale of these movements and the calm they inspire. Millimeters per year, centimeters per decade. These increments are so subtle that the human eye cannot perceive them, yet they define the landscape. The mountains you imagined rising, folding, and eroding in previous chapters continue this delicate balance of creation and refinement. Their slow ascent, their gradual adjustment, is ongoing even as you rest. Faults still creep, fractures still release tension. Rivers shift course imperceptibly. Winds erode gently. The cycle of uplift and wear continues quietly. The earth never hurries, yet nothing remains stagnant. There is a harmony here, a synchronization between forces above and below, a balance that allows change to be both persistent and gentle. You can imagine yourself lying on the slope of a mountain, feeling the subtle pulse of the earth. Each moment carries within it countless motions. Stone folding, heat rising, rivers moving, winds brushing. You are part of this rhythm, connected to it through the very ground you inhabit, carried along by the slow, quiet work that surrounds you. Even the oldest, most massive peaks are shaped in small increments. Every ridge, every valley, every cliff face is a result of countless tiny movements accumulated over eons. The permanence you perceive is an illusion of scale. Beneath that appearance lies constant, subtle transformation. These changes are not rushed or abrupt. They are the steady persistence of the planet itself, an invisible hand shaping the world with patience and care. You may notice how reassuring it is to consider that motion does not require urgency. The mountains do not topple or crumble in haste. Their stability emerges precisely because the movements beneath are continuous and measured. The earth shows that balance does not come from stillness but from slow, deliberate adjustment. Pressure, uplift, erosion, and release all operate together, maintaining equilibrium across vast spans of time. As your awareness drifts, you may imagine the rivers that carve through valleys below. They trace the paths defined by tectonics, mountains, and erosion. They are rivers of both water and history, moving sediments that carry stories from high peaks to distant seas. Life follows these flows, adapting to shifts in water, soil, and climate. Mountains are more than stone. They are conductors of change, guiding the living world through subtle, patient force. Even the smallest events contribute to the ongoing rhythm. A landslide here, a creeping fault there, the slow polishing of a cliff by wind. All are parts of the continuous dance of creation and renewal. The earth demonstrates that cumulative, gentle forces can produce profound results. Every shift, however small, participates in shaping the land. You may sense the quiet miracle of persistence. Stone rises, bends, and wears. Rivers trace paths of flow. Glaciers creep and deposit. Life adapts. All of this happens without urgency, without noise, without spectacle. Yet the results are magnificent. Mountains stand, valleys deepen, ecosystems flourish, and the world carries on. The work is continuous, patient, and eternal. As you drift further into sleep, consider the lessons of these slow motions. Change does not need to be loud or rapid to be effective. Persistence matters more than speed. Balance is found not in freezing movement but in allowing steady adjustment. The mountains, rivers, faults, and ice demonstrate that the world can shift and grow while remaining peaceful, that evolution and transformation can coexist with serenity. You may notice that even in apparent stillness, the earth teaches the rhythm of patience. Motion persists quietly beneath every ridge, within every fold of rock, and through every channel carved by water. These processes will continue long after you have slept, long after your consciousness drifts elsewhere, silently guiding the land and life that depend on it. And as your body sinks deeper into rest, you feel the continuity of this slow, patient work. The mountains will keep rising and reshaping, rivers will trace new courses, and the earth will persist in its quiet, steady transformation. You are cradled within the patient rhythm of the planet, carried toward sleep by the knowledge that change can be gentle, enduring, and beautifully unhurried.